Namaste, my dear brothers and sisters. The love and blessings of the Mother and Sri Aurobindo to all of you from Sri Aurobindo Ashram, Delhi branch. This edition of Yes Talks is titled Sri Aurobindo Savitri, A Glimpse. Savitri is one of the best known and least understood works of Sri Aurobindo, something like the Life Divine. But let me assure you, it is in fact a little easier to understand than the Life Divine. We did the Life Divine last week. This is easier to understand. One reason being that it is in the format of a story, like the Gita. So stories are easier to understand. Uh, and another important thing to remember is that the that Savitri, to some extent, also the Life Divine, are not really pieces of literature. They are scriptures. Savitri, even more so than the Life Divine, and you shall understand why I am saying so. Although even as a piece of literature, both these stand out as masterpieces. Savitri is a poem of about 24,000 lines, 24,000 lines in blank verse, and going into the highest truths of existence is itself a remarkable feat. But then there is much more that Savitri has than even all this. So, with this little introduction, let us turn to the slides and we'll see what I'm trying to say. In the complete works of Sri Aurobindo, Savitri constitutes the uh, two volumes, volume 33 and 34. And like all the works of Sri Aurobindo, it's available for free download on www.sriaurobindoashram.org, which is the website of Sri Aurobindo Ashram, Pondicherry. You're all familiar with the legend of Savitri in the Mahabharata. And the storyline in Sri Aurobindo's Savitri is also essentially the same. So let's see what the legend of Savitri is in the Mahabharata. There was a king. The king's name was Ashwapati, and he had everything, but there's always a but in life. He was childless. And to get a child, he performed a daily yajna, a sacrifice, a ritual for 18 years. And that was successful. His prayers were heard, and he was given a boon that he will have a daughter, and the daughter was named Savitri. Savitri was as beautiful as she was accomplished in every other respect, and someone who's as perfect as Savitri finds it very difficult to find a mate because such people are very easy to admire from a distance, but very difficult to live with. And therefore, she did not find a mate, and she was going beyond the marriageable age. So her father told her, Ashwapati told her to go and look for a mate for herself. He, of course, knew why it was so and what is the type of partner she would have so that she could uh, accomplish the type of mission for which she was here in this world. But then he told her to go, and she met Satyavan in the forest and married him in spite of coming to know that he was to live for only one more year. So during that 1 year, she was thinking of what to do to prolong the companionship. So she performed the Tri-Ratra Vrat, that is a penance for 3 nights in which there are severe austerities like standing on one foot. And as a result of this spiritual practice, she acquired great spiritual powers. On the destined day, Satyavan did die, and Satyavan was, a woodcutter. His parents were a king and queen, but because of some deceit, they had lost their kingdoms and they had also lost their eyesight. They used to live in the forest, and Satyavan used to go and cut some wood to make a living. So he used to go all alone every day normally, but on this particular day, since Savitri knew that he was going to die, she accompanied him, and he did collapse. And when the god of death was taking away his soul, leaving the body behind, Savitri confronted the god of death and followed him. And the god of death naturally tried to discourage her. He told her that this is Satyavan's destiny and you cannot change these laws. But then, seeing her spiritual capacity, he told her to ask for any boons she wanted. She asked for the eyesight of her in-laws to be restored, their kingdom to be restored, and so on. But and all those boons were granted. But then she was not satisfied, and seeing her persistence and her great spiritual capacity, finally the god of death relented, and she brought Satyavan back to earth. This is a rather small and minor episode in the Mahabharata, occupying only 700 lines. Let's see what happens in Sri Aurobindo's Savitri. In Sri Aurobindo's Savitri also, King Ashwapati is childless. But then, instead of going into any ritualistic sacrifice or yajna, he performed or went in for a major spiritual quest in the form of his yoga. And the reason for entering this path, getting onto the path of yoga, was not in fact just to get a child. In fact, he had a larger aim. His aim was to change the character of the earth. The destiny of the earth, he knew, was not to remain as it is now forever. It is axiomatic that if we consider the earth to be a place of sorrow and misery and suffering, but then he thought just because it has been so for thousands of years, doesn't mean that it always has to be so. And looking at the trend in evolution, he could see that the character of the world is going to change in the near future. But then he wanted to accelerate that, and he wanted someone to come into this world to accelerate that process, to create the right atmosphere for that type of evolution, which will change the character of Earth. That is why he was performing his yoga. And his prayer is also granted, and he's assured that one shall descend on earth who will come and do what Ashwapati wanted. And to accomplish that mission, Savitri is born. And as in Mahabharata, Savitri does not find a mate, and she is sent to find a mate for herself. She meets Satyavan in the forest, and she comes to know that he'll die after a year, but she insists that she'll marry only Satyavan. And during that 1 year, when she was with Satyavan, she started going into her own yoga. As a result of this yoga for 1 year, she enhanced her spiritual capacity as a human being. Although she was a celestial creature who had come down from heavens, and therefore she already had enormous spiritual capacity. But while on earth, like every avatar, she behaved like a human being, put on the limitations of an ordinary human being, and walked the path of yoga to enhance her spiritual capacity. And she reached the peak spiritual capacity before Satyavan died. Satyavan did die, and then she confronted the god of death, and she entered into a debate with the god of death as to why he should return Satyavan to her. And once again, she succeeded in getting Satyavan back. But then in the legend of Mahabharata, Savitri gets Satyavan back because she wanted a companion, and she wanted to overcome the grief that she had experienced because of Satyavan's death. But here, Savitri has a larger mission for which her companionship with Satyavan was essential. Savitri was the agent of the divine, to bring about transformation of earth, transformation of human life on earth, eliminate from it misery, sorrow, and suffering. And for that, she needed human material. And Satyavan was that type of highly accomplished human material, a symbol of that type of human material on whom Savitri could work, and change the character of human life in the world. In the legend of Mahabharata, the episode of Savitri occupies only 700 lines. Sri Aurobindo's Savitri is 24,000 lines. Why did Sri Aurobindo have to expand it so much? You would have partly understood by now, because this, while the storyline is the same, the uh, overall thrust, the overall sort of plot of this legend, which Sri Aurobindo put in the form of this poem, Savitri, is much wider. Ashwapati's yoga was not just for getting a child, it was for getting someone who could change the character of human life in the world. And the uh, reason why Savitri wanted Satyavan back was not just because, like any ordinary woman, she would like to have her husband back if he has died. It was not that. It was much more than that. She wanted Satyavan back because the two together, the presence of the two together, was essential for accomplishing the mission for which she was here in this world. And the mission was nothing short of changing the very character of human life, going beyond what it has been like for thousands of years. Now let's see what the plan of Savitri is, Sri Aurobindo's Savitri. It has three parts. Part one has book one, which has two cantos, which may be considered the preface and the introduction to Savitri. And then it has cantos 3 to 5, which is Ashwapati's Yoga. So in fact, the story starts with canto 3, with book 1, canto 3, which is Ashwapati's Yoga. Ashwapati goes on the path of yoga because he wanted to change the character of this earth. So that with that mission, he embarks on the journey of yoga. Book 2, Ashwapati's Yoga, continues. Why it starts in book 1 and why not straight away in book 2? And why it did not continue in book 1 and had to go to, a part of it had to spill over to book 2, that we shall see in a moment, we shall understand, because there is a reason behind that also. And then, in fact, it continues also into book 3, which is about the objective of Ashwapati's Yoga having been achieved or accomplished. Then part 2, we have book 4. Ashwapati gets the boon of getting the one who will change the character of this world. She is born, she is named Savitri. She grows up into a beautiful, well-accomplished person with qualities which border on the divine. And then she can't find a mate. In book 5, she goes in search of a mate and meets Satyavan. Then in book 6 enters Narad, who comes and announces in a subtle way and finally, when persuaded in clear terms, that Satyavan is otherwise very suitable for Savitri, but he will die after a year after marriage. And after marriage, then Savitri embarks on her journey of yoga. And in book 8, Satyavan dies. In part 3, after Satyavan's death, in book 9, Savitri follows the god of death. And then in book 10, there's a debate between Savitri and the god of death. The god of death trying to persuade her to go back to earth all alone, leaving Satyavan with him. But she insists on getting Satyavan back and gives her own arguments for that. In book 11, finally, Savitri emerges victorious and gets Satyavan back. And in book 12, Savitri and Satyavan return to earth. So you can see that the storyline still remains the same. And we have these 3 parts and 12 books, most of them with a number of cantos, except book 11 and 12, which don't have further division into cantos. Now let's see each part a little more in detail. Part 1, book 1, is titled The Book of Beginnings. It is the beginning of the book, and it starts with the beginning of the day. The beginning of the day is dawn. And the first line of the first canto of book 1 is, "It was the hour before the gods awake." This line, "It was the hour before the gods awake," refers to dawn. And there's a beautiful description of the dawn. So this sort of is an introduction. And then it turns a little to the plot of the story and ends with, "This was the day when Satyavan had to die," when Satyavan was to die. So this is the dawn of the day. Canto 1 starts the dawn of the day on which Satyavan was destined to die. And in Canto 2, the issue, that is, what was the major evolutionary crisis for which Savitri had to come, is discussed. So in a way, you can say that Canto 1 and Canto 2 put together are an introduction. They are the preface, and also you get a bit of the story, but the part that you get follows the flashback technique. Because the death of Satyavan, in fact, comes quite late, somewhere in the middle of the story, but here that is what comes at the very beginning of the Book of Beginnings. So the book begins with the story, all right, but using the flashback technique. Now, these two cantos, Canto 1 and Canto 2, are amongst the most difficult cantos of Savitri. And that is one reason why people sometimes give up. But then, as you can see, they don't really have much of the story. The storyline starts from Canto 3. And therefore, if you find these very difficult, don't get discouraged. You can straight away go to Canto 3 and then come back to these cantos after you got a little more idea of what Savitri is about. Before I go further, let me give you a few lines from Book 1, Canto 2, in which are described the qualities of Savitri. And in fact, the qualities of Savitri are the same as the qualities of the mother. And in fact, there is almost unanimity that when Sri Aurobindo was writing this, Savitri was the mother and Ashwapati was Sri Aurobindo himself. So there are qualities of the mother described, qualities of Savitri described, means more or less the same thing, in beautiful language, in some of the most delightful poetry in Book 1, Canto 2. The one who had come to accomplish this mission of changing the character of the earth. Immortal rhythms swayed her time-bound steps. Her look, her smile awoke celestial sense. Even in earth stuff, and their intense delight poured a supernal beauty on men's lives. Immortal rhythms swayed her time-bound steps. Although she was time-bound, that is, she was existing here in the world within the framework of time. In fact, what seemed to sway her as she walked on this earth was an immortal rhythm, that is, a rhythm that was beyond time. So her very character of her movements reflected an immortal, eternal, timeless character. Because she was, in fact, nothing but the divine here in a human form on earth. Her look, her smile awoke celestial sense. So her look and her smile had the charm, which was a sort of a spiritual experience. It awoke celestial sense, the sense of another beautiful world, which was much better than this earth. Her look, her smile awoke celestial sense, even in earth stuff. Now here, in fact, this even in earth stuff should be read together with the previous line. Her look, her smile awoke celestial sense, even in earth stuff. Now it makes a little different sense. It awoke celestial sense, but where? Even in earth stuff. Now this happens quite often in Savitri. You find that after celestial sense, there is no comma. And therefore, it's understood that it has to be read along with the first word in the next line. In fact, the comma comes after earth stuff. Now, this is the technique of enjambment. Enjambment, and this is a sort of style, blank verse with this enjambment is technically perfect. You know, those who don't understand much about poetry like me sometimes have this feeling that every line almost must end with a comma and the next line should start something new. But in this style, so technically it's correct. I mean, Sri Aurobindo, it's not that Sri Aurobindo just felt like doing it and so he has done it. It follows more or less the technical principles of writing poetry in blank verse. And when he has deviated from it, it has been a conscious deviation, because the important thing is to create that poetic sense. In fact, Sri Aurobindo has created not just poetic sense. In most of Savitri, there is a mantric quality. And that was what was important to him, not sticking to some technical rules of poetry. But all the same, he knew those rules, and he followed them most of the time. He made an exception when it was necessary in the interest of lending that mantric quality to what he was writing, when he wanted that his consciousness should be reflected in what he's writing. And that is one reason also why he revised many parts of Savitri, because he wanted it to match the consciousness from which he was writing. And therefore, it cannot be, in fact, entirely understood. Savitri cannot be also entirely understood at the mental level. And therefore, the higher one rises, the more progress one makes on the spiritual path, the more intelligible it becomes. And also, sometimes it starts meaning something quite different from what it may mean otherwise, if one just looks at the words and tries to understand them at the mental level. So coming back to these lines, her look, her smile awoke celestial sense even in earth stuff. And the same thing between the remainder of this line and the next line. And their intense delight poured a supernal beauty on men's lives. And their intense delight of what? Intense delight of her look and her smile. So there refers to those two words. So the intense delight of her look and her smile poured a supernal beauty on men's lives. So any man's life that she touched acquired a beauty that was beyond imagination on this earth, and that stupendous result, that marvelous result was achieved just by her look and her smile. That was enough to create in men's lives that intense delight which normally one associates with something beyond this earth, which may normally associate with heaven. So that is the type of delight that was poured by just her look and her smile. So part 1, book 1, at the book of beginnings, in Canto 1 and Canto 2 are the preface and the introduction. And Canto 1 ends with the line, "This was the day Satyavan was destined to die." And in Canto 2, we find the issue, that is the issue of the evolutionary crisis on earth discussed, and also the one who had come down from heaven, come down here to this earth to accomplish that mission, to change the character of earth. Her qualities have also been described in beautiful poetic language. There is yet one more beginning in book 1. The book of beginnings has one more beginning, not just the beginning of the book and so on. It also has the beginning of Ashwapati's yoga. And that continues in book 2 and book 3. In fact, the story, if you start the story with Ashwapati being childless and therefore embarking on the journey of yoga, the story really begins in book 1, Canto 3. Now, book 1 has 5 cantos. Canto 3 is about Ashwapati's psycho-spiritual transformation. And that is his different parts of the being, the body, the emotional part of the being, and the intellect, undergoing a transformation under the psychic influence. And his rise in his level of consciousness and ascent to a high level of consciousness. And as a result of that, Ashwapati realizes the deepest truths of existence in Canto 4. So Canto 3 has the process of psycho-spiritual transformation, the ascent to a high level of consciousness, and the descent of the spiritual consciousness into these parts of the being, together accomplishing the psycho-spiritual transformation. Psycho referring to the transformation based on the person trying to connect to the psychic being in his actions, in his thoughts and his feelings, and the spiritual referring to the descent of the higher influence which is in response to the aspiration and the effort put in by the seeker. So that transformation is complete by the end of Canto 3, and the result is spiritual experiences, which Ashwapati gets. We may call it Ashwapati's realization. That is the ultimate reality becoming real to Ashwapati, and as a result, he's getting certain spiritual experiences. In Canto 5 comes Ashwapati's supramental transformation, which always which can follow, it can only follow psycho-spiritual transformation. Psychic and spiritual transformation can be successive, simultaneous, partly simultaneous. Spiritual may precede psychic or psychic may precede spiritual, but supramental transformation does not begin till psycho-spiritual transformation is complete. So Ashwapati undergoes, experiences that also. So experiences supramental transformation. And then in book 2, after reaching the highest level of consciousness, beyond what yogis have generally reached, beyond overmind, which itself is an extremely high level of consciousness, Ashwapati experiences the traveling through the worlds. So this is again a spiritual experience, and we shall talk about it a little maybe later. Or maybe I can tell you that this experience of traveling through the worlds is traveling through worlds other than this, some of them being much worse than the earth, some of them similar to the earth, and some of them much better than the earth, sort of a spectrum of worlds, which we may call heaven and hell, and a lot in between. So it means that this, goes into occult stuff, which is not a part of our normal experience, but lends credibility to the assertions of yogis that this world is not the only world that exists. The divine has manifested itself through several other worlds as well. But the main difference is that in those other worlds, there is a uniformity of the level of consciousness, which means that beings, some of them like human beings, reside there well segregated in terms of their level of consciousness. Those with the lowest level of consciousness would be in what we may call hell, and those with the highest would be in what we may call heaven. And then with all the consciousness having such a wide spectrum, those with the intermediate levels would be in those intermediate worlds. But then because of this uniform character, because of good and evil not coexisting as it does on earth, there is little chance of further evolution. So evolution of consciousness takes place only on earth in human life. So to be born a human being in this world is itself a great privilege, because it gives us an opportunity to evolve further, to rise in consciousness, so that after death, we return to a world which is better than the world from which we came. So the Ashwapati's experience of traveling through the worlds is about those other worlds other than this one. And his objective, book 3 has his objective, which is to bring heaven down to earth. The best type of worlds that he has experienced while traveling through different worlds, he wants that a similar development should take place on this earth. And in book 3, that objective is actually achieved, or at least he receives an assurance that that objective would be achieved. So in part 1, book 1, Canto 4, Canto 4, which is Ashwapati's realization of the deepest truths of existence. This canto is titled The Secret Knowledge. It's just about 30 pages, and it's a beautiful poetic description of the highest truths of existence. And Dr. Nadkarni, to whom I owe my understanding of Savitri to a great extent, used to say that the secret knowledge, this book 1, Canto 4, is in fact a beautiful poetic summary of the life divine. The life divine is 1,000 pages. Here in 30 pages, you have essentially the summary of the life divine, the secret knowledge. Titled The Secret Knowledge, the knowledge that Ashwapati discovered as a result of his yoga, the psycho-spiritual transformation. So that was book 1, the book of beginnings. the preface and the introduction, and then going on to Ashwapati's yoga. Then book 2, Ashwapati traveling through different worlds. And then book 3, in book 3, Ashwapati clarifies his objective of his yoga and prays to the Divine Mother for helping him accomplish that mission, that is changing the character of this world. But then the Divine Mother resists. She says, you can ask anything for yourself, but don't ask to change the very character of this world. Only one boon to greaten thy spirit demand. Only one joy to raise thy kind. Above blind fate and actually the pictures are hiding a bit of what is written there in the slide. Only one boon to greaten thy spirit demand. That is, the Divine Mother is telling Ashwapati, uh, ask for a boon to greaten thy spirit. That is, to make for your own progress. Only one joy to raise thy kind. That is, to help some more rise to your level to walk the same path. Above blind fate and the antagonist powers, moveless there stands a high unchanging will. So behind the blind fate that people experience in this world and the antagonist powers, that is the powers of good and evil, moveless there stands a high unchanging will. It's the divine will which has determined this character of this earth. And that will does not change. To its omnipotence, leave thy work's result. So leave the result of your work, your spiritual work, your inner work, to the omnipotence of the divine who has designed this universe and through its unchanging will given a certain character to this earth. And if at all the type of change that you want has to take place, it will happen when the divine wills it. All things shall change in God's transfiguring hour. So this is a sort of a consolation and assurance that, well, what you're saying would probably eventually happen one day, but it will happen in God's transfiguring hour, when God chooses to do it in his time and in his way. So do not demand that prematurely right now. You should be contented with your own spiritual progress and maybe inspiring some more to also make that type of progress, but don't ask for a change in the very character of this world. Fate will continue to be blind here, and antagonist powers will continue to exist on this earth because that is in keeping with that unchanging divine will. But then he persists, and finally, the Divine Mother relents. And she says, "O strong forerunner, that is, you are a pioneer. You are running ahead of time. I have heard thy cry. I have heard your pleading. I have heard your intense aspiration. I have heard what you are asking for. And one shall descend and break the iron law, change nature's doom by the lone spirit's power." So one shall descend from heaven and break the iron law. The iron law that governs this world, because of which the fate is blind and there is sorrow, misery, and suffering in this world. He'll come and break that law, which seems to be an iron law, but one will descend, will break that iron law, change nature's doom by the lone spirit's power. So the type of character which we may call nature's doom will be changed by that lone spirit's power. It will be apparently alone, but that one will be so powerful, will be so empowered, will have such capacity that using the power of its spirit, she will be able to change this character of this earth which is destined to a sort of a doom it appears, but then that will change. A limitless mind that can contain the world, a sweet and violent heart of ardent calms, moved by the passions of the gods, shall come. So this is again a description of the type of a creature who will descend, who will accomplish this mission. A limitless mind, a mind with unlimited by time and space, that can contain the world. She'll have a heart that can contain the whole world, a sweet and violent heart of ardent calms, moved by the passions of the gods, shall come. So she'll have the type of heart that will be sweet, and although like a heart, it will have its turbulence, but then it will be moved by what? By the passions of the gods. Those godly passions, she shall come. So this assurance is given. And what was Sri Aurobindo's vision of what would happen when this actually happens, when the vision that he had is accomplished? He had a vision of that also, which also comes in the same uh, section, Book 3, Canto 4. I saw the omnipotent flaming pioneers over the heavenly verge which turns towards life, come crowding down the amber stairs of birth, forerunners of a divine multitude. Out of the paths of the morning star they came into the little room of mortal life. So the pioneers, the children who will come and change the character of this earth, the pioneers sent by the omnipotent itself, the divine. I saw the omnipotent flaming pioneers over the heavenly verge which turns towards life, come crowding down the amber stairs of birth. So they'll be born one by one and cross the heavenly verge into this world, like the athletes, to see in Commonwealth Games or Asian Games and such, or the Olympics, you have so many, each carrying a flame of a flame, if, and each the team from each country carrying a flame and so on. So that is the type of vision that Sri Aurobindo had, that they'll all be sort of as if carrying a flame that has been handed over to them by the omnipotent, and they'll cross over from heaven to this earth and take, as if and amber stairs, and what will they be pioneers of? Forerunners of a divine multitude. That is, they will be the first amongst those. They'll be the ones who will herald a divine multitude. That's a large population of human beings with a divine character. The emphasis, throughout in this future vision of Sri Aurobindo is on numbers, because a few saints and sages with those divine qualities have always existed in this world. But why the world has continued to be a place of misery and sorrow and suffering is that their positivity has not been able to neutralize all the negativity that is there because of the multitude, because of the average level of human consciousness being of a rather low order. Their presence here has been useful, it has had an uplifting effect, but those few saints and sages have not been able to do it because of the average level of human consciousness being of a low order, being essentially ego-driven rather than love-driven. But then when the number of these human beings with that divine character, whose life is organized around their divine essence, those who are driven by love rather than by their ego, the very character of the world would change. So the emphasis is on numbers, because only numbers which can raise the average. And it's the average consciousness that determines the type of world that we have, the character of life on earth. So these forerunners, these pioneers, Sri Aurobindo saw coming down from the coming down from heaven to earth, and they are the first amongst those who will lead to that change, so that the number of these human beings with a divine character will multiply. They are the forerunners of a divine multitude. Out of the paths of the morning star they came into the little room of mortal life. So they do enter mortal life like all human beings, but then they have a different mission, a different character. And another beautiful set of lines in continuation with this: I saw them cross the twilight of an age, the sun-eyed children of a marvelous dawn. Now, this is one of the lines which is one of my favorites. The sun-eyed children of a marvelous dawn. The children, have those big, beautiful, curious, innocent eyes, and they are sort of, their eyes symbolize a marvelous dawn. Dawn is, the beginning of brightness. So the beginning of something bright in this world is what their eyes seem to be speaking. These eyes seem to be saying that the sun-eyed children of a marvelous dawn, the great creators with wide brows of calm. And that is what their brows are like, full of calm, no anxiety, no stress. The massive barrier breakers of the world. Again, another important thing in Sri Aurobindo's way of looking at everything, not restricted to any of the obstacles, any of the prejudices, any of the barriers which commonly limit our thinking. So they are the ones who will come and break those barriers of the of convention and so on. The massive barrier breakers of the world. They will not be inhibited by what has been so for that it has been so for such a long time, and therefore it has to continue to be so. How can it be changed? It must be good, and therefore it has survived for so long. Now that is not the type of attitude that that these children will have. They'll be the massive barrier breakers of the world, and restless with destiny in her lists of will. So destiny might have its list of what it should happen, but then these are the children who will wrestle with it, who will not accept it without resistance, who will not accept it uh, without offering a better alternative, and struggling for it if necessary. Restless with destiny in her lists of will, the laborers in the quarries of the gods. Where will they get their material from? From the quarries of their gods, and they'll uh, unearth that, they'll do their mining there and bring those elements to earth, which will change the character of this world. The messengers of the incommunicable, they are they bring the message from the divine itself, the incommunicable. We may not be able to directly communicate with the divine, but then he has sent his ambassadors, his messengers here. They are the architects of immortality who will eventually change the character of this world, which is mortality is one of those characteristics. What's that? Asatoma Sadgamaya, Tamasoma Jyotirgamaya, Mrityorma Amritam Gamaya. So these are the ones who will take us to that Amrit, Mrityorma Amritam Gamaya, from mortality to immortality. So that was part one, the introduction, and Ashwapati's yoga with a clear aim of changing the character of this world. He's going through that journey of yoga, finally getting an audience with the Divine Mother, pleading with her to grant what he wanted, and finally succeeding in getting that boon that yes, one will come to this earth who will accomplish what Ashwapati, read Sri Aurobindo, wants. Now in part two, the boon that was granted, that one shall descends in the form of Savitri. She grows into a beautiful girl. Book 5, she meets Satyavan. And in book 6, it discovered the fate that awaits her. Satyavan would die in a year. And then she does get married in spite of that. And then in book 7, she embarks on her yoga. And in book 8, Satyavan dies on the destined day. So now we'll go over bits of part 2. In just this 1 hour or so, it's not possible to do really justice to every book and every canto, but I think you'll get the outline all right. That is the way I've tried to organize this. Now, Savitri has gone and in search of her mate, found Satyavan, and then she has come back home. And she tells her father, Father and King, I have carried out thy will. That is, I have gone in search of the partner and have found one. One whom I sought, I found in distant lands. I have obeyed my heart. I have heard its call. Well hast thou done, her father says, well hast thou done, and I approve thy choice. If this is all, then all is surely well. If there is more, then all can still be well. Now, these are lines which are rather guarded. He has given his approval, and yet you can see that there is a hint that he knows more than what has been revealed so far, more than what is apparent so far. But then he gives that assurance that, well, all is well and all can be well in future. Now, again, these are two of my favorite lines from Savitri, which can put us at ease, relieve all anxiety about the future. If this is all, then all is surely well. If there is more, then all can still be well. So these are lines which can make us live with a lot of ignorance of what might happen, relieve us of that fear and anxiety about the future. Just these two lines. If there is more, then all can still be well. Now, in part 2, book 6, uh, enters Narad into the picture. And Narad, is that hotline between earth and heaven. And he's here with a purpose, as we shall see. But then he knows what is going to happen to the partner that Savitri has chosen, as does Ashwapati. Both of them know it. But then from the way they speak, Savitri's mother, the queen, gets a bit of a hint about something fishy being there. And she tells him that at least tell what you have in mind, because maybe we can take preventive action. We don't have to get into a bad situation deliberately. So tell us what you know about the future, about what might happen. Now, Narad is initially reluctant and says, what help is in prevision to the driven? Safe doors cry opening near, the doomed pass on. A future knowledge is an added pain, a torturing burden and a fruitless light on the enormous scene that fate has built. So it doesn't really help to know things in advance, because fate is relentless. Whatever has to happen will in any case happen. Knowing it in advance is only an additional torture. And to just sort of give an example of how fate can work and make us do stupid things, he says, safe doors cry opening near. When doors which offer and guarantee safety are very near and they are making a lot of noise, they are open and they are sort of calling us, come along, the door is open, enter this safe door. And yet people give those doors a pass. They go beyond those doors somewhere else, and because they are doomed, they pass on. They go beyond these doors instead of entering these doors. So that is what fate is like. And if that is the type of character fate has, of being something inevitable, which we just can't avoid, then what use it is to know in advance what might happen? A future knowledge is an added pain, a torturing burden and a fruitless light on the enormous scene that fate has built. So it only adds to the pain and torture. And fate has in any case got a relentless character. So because the queen persists, finally, Narad does reveal that a year later, Satyavan must die. So to start with, the queen pleads with Savitri. She asked her to change her mind, marry somebody else. And she gives very good arguments, in fact, because after all, she's not an ordinary person again. She is the wife of an accomplished yogi like Ashwapati, and she has given birth to a creature who has descended from heaven, like heaven with a particular mission. She has given birth to that girl, Savitri. So she herself is not an ordinary person, and therefore her arguments are very cogent and very much in keeping with our ordinary everyday experience. But all the same, Savitri has come not to confirm everyday experiences. She is here to change the very character of this world. She has come to change the world order, the order that we have come to accept as normal. She has come to uh, deconstruct it, to break it, to construct something completely new. But then, in keeping with the current order, the queen pleads with Savitri, advancing in a honeyed line but close, a little joy would buy too bitter an end. The beginning may be very sweet, lined with honey, but the end will be bitter. Plead not thy choice, for death has made it vain. For man below the god, above the brute, is given the calm reason as his guide. Only when thou hast climbed above thy mind and livest in the calm vastness of the One can love be eternal in the eternal bliss and love divine replace the human tie. So these are beautiful lines that man is no doubt above the brute animal, but then he's considerably below God. His level of consciousness does not approach those of the gods. And therefore, the most trusted tool that he has, which he can use as his guide, is reason, calm reason. And there is something higher than the mind, but that is not for ordinary human beings. That is for gods and godly human beings. So only when thou hast climbed above thy mind, when you've risen in consciousness so that you can trust something higher than the mind and livest in the calm vastness of the One, you experience the calm vastness of the One Divine, that love can be eternal in the eternal bliss and love divine replace the human tie. It's only at that level that the divine love can replace ordinary human relationships. And therefore, better do what suits a human being and do not jump into this tragedy. Choose someone else. This is only a small sample to give you an idea. In fact, these are very long passages, all very long passages and very beautiful poetry as well as very instructive and educative. Then, these are a few lines which are very sort of important in terms of our guide on in sadhana on the path of integral yoga. And these again are spoken by Savitri's mother, that life itself gives you those opportunities for spiritual progress. Each year a mile upon the heavenly way, each dawn opens into a larger light. Thy acts are thy helpers, all events are signs, waking and sleep are opportunities given to thee by an immortal power. So life is like a pilgrimage, and each year spent is a mile on that heavenly way, that pilgrimage. Each dawn opens into a larger light. Thy acts are thy helpers. That is, whatever you do in this world helps you, or at least can help you, in doing what? In making spiritual progress. All events are signs. So all pleasant and unpleasant events are signs which give us an indication of uh, how to give a new direction to life so that the progress can be hastened. Waking and sleep are opportunities. So not just the day, but even when you are asleep, that also is an opportunity. Sleep can be more conscious. All these have been given. The whatever happens to us in life, the type of work that we do, and so on, all that put together are opportunities that have been given to us by an immortal power for accomplishing the purpose of life. But then Savitri replies, my will is part of the eternal will. My fate is what my spirit's strength can make. My fate is what my spirit's strength can bear. I have seen God smile at me in Satyavan. I have seen the eternal in a human face. Very strong and emphatic lines. My will is a part of the eternal will. What I have willed, that is, I have willed to marry Satyavan, that is a part of the eternal will, part of the divine will. It coincides with the divine will. It is not just based on ordinary human passion. It's not an infatuation. It is a part of the eternal will. My fate is what my spirit strength can make. It's a hint of the fact that I can even change fate. My fate is not fixed. My fate is what my spirit strength can make. The strength of my spirit can create my fate. It's not a predetermined fate. It can change its character as a result of application of my spirit strength. My fate is what my spirit strength can make. My fate is what my spirit strength can bear. And I have the strength to bear whatever my fate is. I can change the fate on one hand, on the other hand, can bear any type of fate. All that is because of the strength that my spirit has. And then she describes Satyavan, why she insists on marrying him. I have seen God smile at me in Satyavan. I have seen the eternal in a human face. Now the queen then turns to Narad. Her daughter is not listening. So she turns to Narad. Why don't you do something? Now Narad, in reply, comes up with some very beautiful lessons and beautiful replies. And this debate between the queen and Narad is yet one of those debates in Savitri which bring out on one hand the average man's way of looking at things, average but very well developed, accomplished, well evolved person, and on the other hand, a much higher and deeper viewpoint which seems to belong to some distant future in this world, which is Aurobindo's view. And here once again you find that the queen talks like a highly accomplished, rational, and spiritually developed person, but then Narad comes up with another point of view. She, questions what type of a world is it? Is it your law that has? Is it your God who has made this cruel law, because of which the world is full of misery and suffering? No, Narad is supposed to have a direct line of communication with God. She says, has your God made this law, this cruel law? Narad then replies, and again I have taken only a few lines about pain, because he explains the justification for pain in the world. Pain is the hammer of the gods to break a dead resistance in the mortal's heart. We resist change, we resist becoming better. We all want to become better, but we resist change. And we are more likely to change when we are going through a painful experience. So pain is like a hammer, like that hammer with which a monkey charmer hit his monkey. The monkey had his hand stuck in a jar because it had gotten hold of too many peanuts in his fist. Now the fist had become grown so big it was not coming out of the jar. So what the monkey charmer did was to give him a knack on the wrist. A few peanuts fell, the wrist became smaller, and then the hand came out. So the monkey was resisting its own liberation, the liberation of its hand, and that is the type of resistance we also offer to our own liberation from the bondages of life. So pain is the hammer of the gods to break a dead resistance in the mortal's heart, his slow inertia as of living stone. He doesn't want to change. He is living, but behaves like a stone. He has the same type of inertia. If the heart were not forced to want and weep, his soul would have lain down content at ease. So, but for these painful experiences which make us want and weep, the person would have been quite content to be as he is. He would have no incentive for progress, for change for the better, for getting closer to the divine. And never thought to exceed the human start and never learned to climb towards the sun. Human beings without pain would have never thought of exceeding their present limitations and exceeding, going beyond where they had started in this life, and would have never learned to climb higher, sun being used as a metaphor for ascent, for going to a higher level of consciousness. Pain is the nature of pain is the hand of nature sculpturing men to greatness. An inspired labor chisels with heavenly cruelty and unwilling mold. Again, very beautiful lines. Pain is the hand of nature sculpturing men to greatness. So pain, is like a chisel. The person who creates a sculpture out of, say, a stone uses a chisel, chips off bit by bit the statue was there within the stone, but then for the statue to emerge, it has to be chiseled. It has to be, bits have to be chipped off. So pain works like the chisel for human beings, sculpturing men to greatness. An inspired labor chisels with heavenly cruelty and unwilling mold. So this labor that the person puts in response to pain is inspired labor, labor inspired by the divine. And what does it do? It acts on an unwilling mold. The human being is basically unwilling, but then under the stimulus of this pain, gets inspired to get chiseled. And it's chiseled with heavenly cruelty. Now, apparently, there's an internal contradiction. How can heaven be cruel? But then, if that cruelty is a necessity for our own welfare, even that cruelty is acceptable and can be given that adjective heavenly. With heavenly, an inspired labor chisels with heavenly cruelty and unwilling mold. So Narad justifies pain in this world, and of course, there's a lot more wise things to say. Now, this particular canto, The Way of Faith and the Problem of Pain, is again one of the most instructive ones, like Book 1, Canto 4, which had the realization of Ashwapati, the secret knowledge. And one way of looking at it would be that although Savitri had a father who was also, in a way, her guru, she also needed a formal guru. All avatars have also adopted a guru, and Narad comes and does what the guru should be doing. Savitri is listening to all this with rapt attention, and in a way, he ends up being a messenger of the divine to play the role of the guru in Savitri's life. And then here, he's again justifying all the misery and suffering in this world. It is not accidental. There is a design behind this. The world is not drifting, but moving in a direction determined by the Creator. This world was not built with random bricks of chance. A blind God is not destiny's architect. A conscious power has drawn the plan of life. There is a meaning in each curve and line. This last line among these lines itself says everything. There's a meaning in each curve and line. Each little turn that our life takes may appear insignificant, but in fact, there is a great deal of significance behind it. It has a meaning because it is the result of a destiny which has been created, which has been drawn, which is in keeping with a plan that has been drawn by a conscious power, the divine itself. It's not that things are happening by chance. And towards the end, Narad tells the queen, think not to intercede with the hidden will, intrude not twixt her spirit and its force, but leave her to her mighty self and fate. A little before this, he also tells her that there are situations in life where no matter how much you may love your child, you will not be there. And she'll be all alone. And in fact, this happens not only to Savitri, this happens to each one of us in life. And therefore, he's telling her that the parents are not there all the time with us, the biological parents. So he tells her that you will not be there, she'll be alone. And she has to face it with the strength of her own spirit. And she has that capacity. And therefore, do not worry about her. Do not try to interfere with the hidden will because of which she has chosen Satyavan. Do not become a barrier between her spirit and the force of that spirit which has made her make this choice. Leave her to her mighty self. Her self is not an ordinary self. In fact, each one of us has the divine within, and her true self is not with a small s, but with a capital S. So the mighty self is the self with a capital S, but leave her to her mighty self and fate. Having spoken thus, he left the earthly scene. He went away. Narad went away to his celestial home. Away from the strife and suffering on our globe, he turned towards his far-off blissful home. So having played his role, coming at just the right moment, when Savitri had just returned after deciding to marry Satyavan, he comes and gives this great lesson to Savitri, her mother, and of course, Ashwapati didn't need it, but then he behaves as if he is also learning something from it and keeps intercepting at the right moments briefly to guide the discussion a bit here and there. So that is the role of Ashwapati in this entire thing. But it's essentially a dialogue between Savitri's mother and Narad. So that was book 6, the book of fate, which is full of lessons from Narad. And now that Narad has told the queen not to interfere with the divine will, Savitri does get married to Satyavan, and knowing that he'll die after a year, she embarks on her journey of yoga. And this is something which is a secret with her. Satyavan doesn't know it. She has not told her in-laws. Nobody else in the family knows. So she has to bear with this apprehension, with this anxiety about what will happen after a year, all on her own. And she has a strong enough spirit to be able to tolerate that. Oh, I didn't realize it's already more than an hour. But anyway, try to go a little faster now. So Savitri's yoga. Now, Savitri's yoga, we'll not go into details of. It is quite different from Ashwapati's yoga, although the overall aim remains the same. But Savitri goes through also what we call a life, you can say not life negating, but the experience of nihil, the experience of a shunya, the experience of the ultimate reality being a nothingness. And then from there, she crosses over to the next stage where she discovers that the ultimate reality is not in nothingness, but what we see around us, the universe, is also a manifestation of the divine. And since all that is a manifestation of the divine, all this could not have come from nothingness, because only nothing can arise out of nothingness. And therefore, she goes from the neti experience to the iti experience. It is not this, it is not this, it is not this. From that, she goes to the experience of this is also that is also that, everything is that. And in book 8 comes Satyavan's death. In book 9, Savitri follows the god. So then part 3. Savitri follows the god of death, and there is a debate between Savitri and the god of death. Book 11, she is victorious in bringing Satyavan back and getting Satyavan back. And in book 12, Savitri and Satyavan return to earth. Now, this is something about death here in book 10, canto 1, after Satyavan's death. And you can see here in the picture, Satyavan trying to take, the god of death trying to take Satyavan's soul away. But then Savitri becomes a barrier, pleading with the god of death not to do that. And on one side is Satyavan's body. Death is a stair, a door, a stumbling stride the soul must take to cross from birth to birth. So death is just an episode, an event in a long journey. And it is a necessary step for crossing from birth to birth. And why is rebirth necessary? Because if the ultimate destiny of each human being is to merge with the divine, and that is a journey nobody can perform in a lifetime, then having covered part of the journey in one life, to cover the rest of the journey, rebirth becomes a logical necessity. So that is why it has to from birth to birth. And if the journey has to continue from birth to birth, death becomes an essential episode intervening between one birth and the next. A grey defeat pregnant with victory. In a way, the death is a defeat. The person has lost the battle of living in this life in the world. So in that sense, it is a defeat, but then it is full of victory because it gives the person an opportunity to go further and come back again. So in a way, victory has been achieved. Whatever could be done in this life has been accomplished. And when the bodily frame or the circumstances are not fit for further covering the journey, more of the journey, the person leaves this world and can come back again. So death is like a whip to lash us towards our deathless state. It takes us so that we can have the type of immortality which is embodied in spending part of our existence in this world, part in some other world, and then again coming back to this world and so on. So, in a way, it's a continuation of the same journey. So, in that sense, we are deathless. Death is only an illusion. Uh, the person does not actually die, but just migrates to another world. The inconscient world is the spirit's self made room, eternal night, shadow of the eternal day. So, the eternal night, death may appear like an eternal night. It is actually just the shadow of the eternal day, the day which is everlasting, which signifies the divine, which signifies the overall recurrent and immortal character of the human race. Now begins the debate between the god of death and Savitri. And once again, the type of arguments that the god of death comes up with appear very reasonable, but they are in keeping with the established order. Savitri is here not to perpetuate the established order, but to create a new order. And therefore, she is always able to give powerful arguments against what the god of death is saying. Here's one sample of what god of death said. If Satyavan had lived, love would have died. If Satyavan had not died now, if he had continued to live for many, many years more, eventually the love would have died. You know, it happens in an average marriage, that initial passion is gone, and then the marriage settles down for a lusterless living together, uh, having a mechanical routine. But that passion, initial passion, is gone. So if Satyavan had lived, love would have died. But Satyavan is dead, and love shall live. It's because he has died that you feel that you love him so much. But then it will not live forever, even this love which you are feeling now. But Satyavan is dead and love shall live a while. Only for some time it will be there, while in thy sad breast. It shall live in your sad breast for a little while. But then, how long will it live? Until his face and body fade on memory's wall, where other bodies, other faces come. So his memory will fade, and other bodies, that is, other human bodies, will take its shape, other faces will take its shape, and love will shift there. So he's telling her what is the character of this love. This is one of the arguments that God of death gives to her, not to persist, not to insist on getting Satyavan back. And in fact, there's hardly any argument that is possible which he does not come up with. The type of arguments he uses are firstly temptation. Temptation like ask for any boons you want, then belittling love, as you saw in this passage that I read, that love is human love in on earth is not really real love. It is only an illusion of love. Divine love is not possible on this earth. Then belittling earth, that the earth is itself a place which is a place of a, average, on an average, a low level of consciousness. It is uh, sorrow and suffering are meant to be here on this earth. So belittling the character of the earth. Belittling man, man is half human and half divine, or half animal and half divine, and belittling man. Then offering precedents. The type of effort that you are making to change the character of the world have been made earlier and they have all failed. And then telling her that this is the established order created by the divine. Earth will be earth and heaven will be heaven. Do not try to change it. But she has good arguments to respond to all these arguments. And when she still continues and keeps coming up with powerful answers to these arguments, he tells her, show me who you are. And then she reveals herself, her divine character. Here are a few lines which are beautiful lines on what divine love is like and why love is an important thing in this world, in spite of all its limitations, why love has been planted here in this world at all. To live, to love are signs of infinite things. These are representative of, these are the signatures of infinite things. Love is a glory from eternity's spheres. So, love has been planted here in this world by the eternal, from eternal spheres with a purpose. And what is the purpose? The purpose is to provide an antidote to the ego, to provide a principle which, unlike the ego, which is a separative principle, there should also be a principle that unites. And without these two, further evolution would not be possible. And that's why in this particular book 10, there are these beautiful lines on love. Love must not cease to live upon earth. Love is a necessity, for love is the bright link twixt earth and heaven. It is that bright link between earth and heaven. Love is the far transcendent angel here. It is a representative, an ambassador of the transcendent, the one that transcends all creation, that is the divine. Love is man's lien on the absolute. That is that link with the absolute, the link between the human being and the absolute. So that is why love must not cease to live upon earth. Any type of love is better than no love at all, but then there are rungs of love. The lowest rung being dependent on basically what I can get from the other person, and the highest, the love which is expressed by giving and thrives on just the joy of giving. And in between is the two type of love, which is human love, which is based on give and take. You love, you give, so long as you also keep getting something in return. So love must not cease to live upon the earth, for love is the bright link twixt earth and heaven. Love is the far transcendent angel here. Love is man's lien on the absolute. So after all these arguments, finally the god of death concedes defeat and he leaves the scene. But then that is not the end. The divine itself again speaks to Savitri and tries to test her, tempt her with her personal salvation. But she says that she's here not for her personal salvation, but for changing the character of the world. And the divine realizes that she still remembers the mission with which she has come to this world, and grants her that power that she will be able to do it, grants her, blesses her with the capacity to accomplish her mission successfully. So Satyavan has been left behind by the god of death, and the divine voice now has blessed Savitri, and with that, now Savitri in book 12 returns to earth. So that divine voice also offers her boons like personal peace, personal liberation, and bliss, but she does not accept any of those. She insists that she wants nothing short of uh, the capacity to change the character of this world, which is the mission with which she has come. So Savitri and Satyavan return to earth and start walking home. And as they reach home, they are asked, what is it that you have learned through all this voyage through which you have been? Some of the rishis and all are also there in the forest. They ask Savitri, what is it that you have learned? And she says, to feel love and oneness is to live. That is, life is worth living. Life acquires a purpose only if it is full of love, which has been inspired by a sense of oneness with others. This comes almost towards the end of Savitri, amongst the last lines in the last book, book 12. So it may be considered, in fact, the Mahavakya of Savitri, a very simple line, but a very meaningful line. So all what Savitri learned after going through all these experiences, she puts in just one simple line: to feel love and oneness is to live. And this is Sri Aurobindo's vision of the future of the world. Even the multitude shall hear the voice, that is, large numbers would hear the voice which calls them for an effort to rise in consciousness. They should develop that aspiration and turn to commune with the spirit within and strive to obey the high spiritual law. So the emphasis is on numbers. Large numbers will do it. A few will have been doing it all along, but now large numbers will respond to that call And this earth shall stir with impulses sublime, humanity awake to deepest self, nature the hidden Godhead recognize. So that's how the character of the world will start changing. Thus shall the earth open to divinity, and common natures feel the wide uplift. Even ordinary common natures will feel a perceptible upward shift, so they'll experience that uplift. Illumine common acts with the Spirit's ray and meet the deity in common things. So it's common things will become uncommon, sort of what we consider uncommon today. So what is uncommon today will become common. What appears extraordinary today will become ordinary. Nature shall live to manifest secret God. The Spirit shall take up the human play. The, this earthly life become the life divine. So the character of the world will change. Life on earth will become the life divine. Savitri, in fact, has three debates, as you might have seen. One is between Ashwapati and the Divine Mother. Ashwapati has had all his realizations, and then he pleads with the Divine Mother for change in the character of this world. And she initially resists and tells him, you can be satisfied with your own salvation and do not ask for changing the established order. Then the second debate is between Narad and Savitri's mother. Savitri's mother pleading with Narad, why is the world a place of misery and suffering, and why we have to submit to fate when we can see clearly that we can do something by which we can avoid cruel fate. And the third debate is between Savitri and the god of death. The god of death, again, offering Savitri many temptations and many arguments for giving up and going back to earth alone. But she keeps offering better arguments, more powerful arguments, higher order of truth. As she says, what you are saying is true, but it is not the type of truth that I want. Your truth slays, my truth saves. So a lot, in fact, emerges from these three debates, and these can be amongst the most interesting as well as educative sections of Savitri. What does Savitri have? You might have seen it has the spiritual experiences of Ashwapati, including traveling through the other worlds, that is occult stuff. So it has spiritual experiences of Ashwapati, read Sri Aurobindo's experiences. It has the spiritual experiences of Savitri, read the spiritual experiences of the mother. So it has Ashwapati's yoga and Savitri's yoga and spiritual experiences of both. Now, apart from these two yogas, yoga of Ashwapati and yoga of Savitri, Savitri also has yoga for the ordinary seeker. What is it that the ordinary seeker should be doing in his life? The what, why, and how of yoga sadhana. And because it has all this, the mother said that Savitri has everything. It has mysticism, that is spiritual philosophy. It has occultism, hidden stuff. It has philosophy. It has history of creation, history of evolution, history of mankind, the purpose for which the creation was created, the destiny of man and destiny of earth. Savitri has everything. Here are a few suggested readings. Savitri itself and this book, Savitri, The Golden Bridge, The Wonderful Fire, based on a very large number of talks that Dr. Mangesh Nadkarni gave, mostly at Savitri Bhavan in Aurobindo, which have been recorded and converted into this book after he left his body. This is a precious collection, and at least I have not come across, there might be some, but I have not come across anybody explaining Savitri at the mental level better than he did. Then there are 9 videos of mine, about 20 minutes each on Yes Spirituality YouTube channel. The playlist is Sri Aurobindo Savitri. If you have any questions or comments, please drop an email to us, yes@yesspirituality.com. Gratitude to Professor Mangesh V. Nadkarni, from whom I learned much of what I have spoken today. And I realized rather late, otherwise I could have put more details and dedicated the whole talk to him. When I was just about to finish the PPT, I felt that probably it was around this time that he left his body in 2007, 15 years ago. And then I went to the place where that could be confirmed. In fact, almost to the day, he left his body on the 23rd of September in 2007 in the lap of the mother in Pondicherry. After having lived for several years in Hyderabad, he was a professor of English, a linguist, and worked at Singapore and later for a long time in the Central Institute of Foreign Languages at Hyderabad. But finally, after retirement, he moved to Pondicherry and left his body in the mother's lap in the year 2007 at a relatively early age, young age of 74. But then he had accomplished in this short life, relatively short life, much more than an average person does in several lifetimes. He was specially gifted by the mother to be able to put Sri Aurobindo's and the mother's teachings in very effective, powerful language, which very few people have seen capable of doing. And Savitri was one of the books in which he specialized. Thanks also to the places from where I got the large number of pictures that you saw. Many of those who have been drawn by Agni, who is a devotee and an Italian artist, Sarita, who is an Indian artist, Subhash, again an Indian artist, and many free images from pexels.com and Shutterstock and rudraksharatna.com. And all these free sources also become available. And in addition, some more images become available through research on Google. Gratitude to the mother and Sri Aurobindo for making this event possible. And thank you all for being there.
There's one question in the chat box. The message says, "Thank you very much for this profound session. I wanted to ask you about the inner attitude of a translator. Since Sri Aurobindo's words are mostly mantric and because of that conveys a subtle message through the words, what do a translator of his words should do? Listening to the inner voice would be sufficient? Praying for his guidance and light altogether?"
That's a very good question. If Savitri cannot be understood at a mental level, it cannot also be translated at a mental level. And translations, in any case, in general, can't do full justice to original. When the original has a mantric quality, then the translation becomes even more difficult. So, having said that, there are two things that the translator can do. One is to try and do it in a frame of mind where he is as connected to the divine as possible. That is, not just sort of thinking about it at a mental level, thinking in terms of what word means what, because we can all have glimpses and short periods of that communion with the divine when the words and ideas and expressions seem to come from a higher source and our hands become just instruments to give it a practical shape. So connect with that source instead of thinking too much at the mental level in terms of the literal meaning of everything that is there. And therefore, it also would mean that the translation need not be an absolutely literal translation, but take a little liberty with the sense that you get from the passage rather than taking it up line by line. The way Sri Aurobindo has done with essays on the Gita, he does not translate each verse of the Gita word for word in the essays on the Gita, and yet the sense emerges much more clearly than it would in a translation. So that is probably what would be the approach of a translator, and then of course follow it up with the disclaimer that I might have failed to convey what Sri Aurobindo actually wanted to convey, but if it conveys even a part of that elevating influence which a mantric or Upanishadic character of Savitri has, then the purpose would have been served. And therefore, it also means that this type of work can't be translated certainly by this type of software, which gives you a literal translation from one language to the other. It has to be done by a human being who is himself on the spiritual path and is trying to make a conscious effort to connect with the divine while translating. And of course, the act of translation itself would further raise the consciousness of the translator. Any more questions?
No. All right. Since there are no more questions, maybe we can just have few moments of silence and end today's session. Thank you everyone for joining me.